Very well, thank you. You're looking well, sir.
Thank you. I'm trying. Samuel, morning. How are you?
Morning, sir. Very well, sir. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Well, not so
Okay.
loud, but clear.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Good morning, GB.
Right.
To see you on the call.
Morning, Tosin.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Okay, I think we can start.
Okay.
Good morning,
Is this
everyone.
going to be recorded?
Yes, it will be recorded.
Okay.
And it will be streamed as well.
Recording in progress.
Yes, it will be. Good morning, Samuel. It will be Tosin. Are we okay to start? Not, I think we can start. Okay, Samuel?
Oh, okay. All right, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Okay, so Tosin, are we okay to start?
Yes, we are. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Team Learning Session. The title of today's session will be Indispensable. It's so good that you're never ignored. And it's been facilitated by Tosin.
We're losing Samuel.
Please
But,
let's
yeah.
type and enjoy the session. You can also, thank you so much. Over to you, Tosin.
Thank you. Thank you, Samuel. I hope we can all hear me okay. If you can't hear me, just send a message in the group. I want you to be as lively as you can be for this session. Got a fair bit to cover. I'm going to try and race through it. Thanks, GB, for some of the really instructive things you said yesterday at M3. I was on the call, and it will align with some of the things that I will talk about today. But yeah, let's kick it off. So I just want to talk to us today from the heart, and honestly, I think I do that all the time, but today I'm even more intentional about it. And I'm not here to talk to you too much about business work, but more about the fundamentals. And the topic is indispensable. Be so good that you never get ignored. It sounds cliche. It sounds like, is that really possible? Is there such a thing as being indispensable? I would argue that there is. And I want to start this way. I want to play this clip, and then we take the conversation from there.
My body went through hell.
Oh, the training.
It's been a lot.
I was like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this process. People think training's going to be you just getting a little bit strong to do a bit of stunts. But for this,
3 hours of martial arts a day.
we had weapons training.
Everything from sword play, spears, machetes, a lot of punching. An hour and a half of weights, sprinting.
Gina, the director, joined us and that helped bond us. She's transformed our bodies. She's transformed our minds. Well,
I mean, I feel like a badass.
So I played this clip. I played this clip to kind of set the stage this morning. We're talking about at the time when this movie was being directed and produced, we're talking about a 56-year-old leading actress. Typically, at this time of your career as a woman, they're already showing you the door in Hollywood, or they start giving you this pseudo documentary kind of roles, and they start asking you for your autobiography because they don't think you have that much to offer. But this woman stayed in the arena. She stayed in the ring. She put in 5 hours a day, as was required by the director in training, an hour and a half strength training, 3.5 hours of martial arts, all sorts of things. And she wasn't really up to it, but she subscribed to it. And the director also decided, to subscribe to the same punishing schedule. And, what you see in the film is then the result of that. Now, that is just to set the scene. We're going to be looking at these two areas. I'm going to be asking questions really about who you are and who you are becoming. And we're also going to be taking a cue from one of our most revered voices in marketing, who talks about being the linchpin in one of his older books, but still a gem till today. I think the book is simply called Linchpin, and that's Seth Godin. So we're going to be taking a cue from that as well. And these are just the two themes I want to explore today. I am sure already it will take all our time, but I will try and go at a rapid pace. So my first opener to you is to recognize who you are. Recognize who you are right now. You are actually the sum total of your beliefs. We have belief systems that have been baked into us from our childhood. You are the sum total of the behavior and the attitudes that have been baked into you, that you have subscribed to. You are the sum total of what your environment conditions you to be. The environment you grew up in, the environment you work in, actually quite important. You are the sum total of the experiences that you go through in life. Some of those experiences are brutal, some of them are limiting, some of them are damaging, some of them are affirming, some of them are life building. You are the sum total of the training that you subscribe to or that you've been put through. Some of the training can also be damaging. You can be trained in the art of learned helplessness, for instance. You're also the sum total of your relationships, and last but definitely not the least, you are the sum total of your habits. So when you want to profile your life, you should ask yourself about these areas of your life. What do I believe in? What's the kind of feedback I get on my attitude and my behavior? What's my environment like? Sometimes by changing one or two of these dynamics, you make a huge shift positively in your life. So let's start from where you are now. And I told you this is going to be quite interactive. So I want to hear from one or two people. I want to hear one thing about yourself that you are absolutely proud of. And I want to hear one thing you're not proud of. I intentionally worded it this way. I didn't want to use more incendiary language, but I want to hear from the room. And it's an interactive session. I want volunteers. If you don't volunteer, I will nominate you. But do me a favor. It's a safe space. Nobody is being put on the spot. And if you don't feel compelled to put your hand up, it's fine. I will still nominate if that doesn't happen. But if you feel led to volunteer, can someone volunteer to tell me one thing they're proud of about themselves so far? Okay, I see Sophia's hand. Sophia, you can go.
Thank you. I'm proud to be a really passionate person. I'm proud of that.
That's amazing. That's brilliant. And it's a good level of self-awareness that leads you to know that you're a passionate person, that the things that that you're concerned about, you really go full on into them and they matter to you. Bengus, I can see your hand up. The floor is yours.
One thing I'm proud of is the fact that I always believe that there is a positive at the end of the day. It's just, so I'm always optimistic.
That's brilliant. And I know that about you. And a lot of times people don't see the massive internal work that it takes to stay positive, that it takes to stay optimistic, in spite of the kind of existing circumstances that we all face, but we might all be on rough seas, but we might not be in the same kind of boat. Some people are in cruise liners, some people are in canoes, some people are just on a floating board, and it's the same ocean that they're on. So it's different circumstances. Let me hear from at least one person about one thing you're not proud of. If you are going to volunteer to tell us, it doesn't have to be, your deepest, darkest, challenge or issue. Hey, Sid, morning. You go for it.
Yeah, good morning, Tosin. So when I was thinking, what's the one thing I'm not proud of? When I listened to it, I realized most times I'm actually the opposite of that. So I can be a pessimist. I just look at everything and see why it did not. Yeah.
Okay. So looking at scenarios and kind of focusing on the negative in any scenario. A lot of people are like this, and sometimes it's a protective mechanism. You're doing that so that you're sort of not caught unawares by the challenges that may or may not be coming. But at the same time, it can be limiting, and it can be like a prison. It can hold you back. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, I'm going to move on very quickly. And I want to talk a little bit about attitude, but maybe it's better to hear from someone who's done some work in that area. And there will be a lot of lessons. I have a lot of videos. I'm sure I'm going to have to skip some, but there will be a lot of lessons even from this one. It's one with a familiar idea that we have heard before. The lady's Mel Robbins. She works on, just personal impact and transformation. Let's listen in.
If you are positive, you're when you succumb to negativity, it changes your character. You snap at your kids, you snap at your teammates, you feel stuck, you feel on edge, you feel tense. And that's why I want to talk to you about the power of your attitude right now, because your brain is a pattern recognizing machine. And when you succumb to negativity, whether you think you're doing it or not, your brain will automatically start to see more negativity and feel more negativity, which is why it's so easy to get stuck ruminating and worrying and in this sort of loop that you can't get out of. And so we're going to talk today about building a positive attitude as a habit. Positive, powerful attitude is infectious. It inspires other people. It makes you resilient. It will help you spot more positive things. What positive things could you spot? You can spot opportunities. You can spot solutions to the problems that you're feeling. You infect other people with this positivity. You show other people that it is possible to face what we're facing right now and not succumb to fear. And so this weekend, I'm going to give you a very simple step to take. It is a grounding tool that will help you build a powerful attitude. The moment you feel yourself getting negative or disassociating or feeling a little despair or starting to get stressed, take a moment and you're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going to assign something to each one of that countdown. 5 things right around you that you can touch or see. What does saying 5 things that you can touch and see do? It immediately brings you into the present moment. This is a powerful practice, everybody, for having a powerful attitude. 4 compliments or things you're proud of. So I'm proud that I spent some time reading a book this morning. I'm proud that I got my ass out of bed eventually and got out of my PJs. I'm proud of the fact that I apologized on the morning team call because I came in like a fury. I'm proud of how I've been with my kids because I've been really trying hard to be patient and it is not easy. 3 people that you're going to reach out to or that you love. This is Mandy. Mandy, say hi to everybody. Name 3 people in your life, darling, that you're going to reach out to. Mandy's reaching out to a friend of hers in Boston, her aunt. Oh, and she's going to FaceTime her grandparents. 2 things that you want to learn in the next day or 2. I'm going to learn about my camera and learn how to take better pictures. Oh my gosh, somebody just said they're making naan bread. I am too. And I'm making dal right now and some incredibly cool new chicken. And the first thing, it's a little mantra you can say to yourself. You ready? Right now, I'm okay. And if I have a positive attitude, I will win. When you feel negative, you're going to do 5 things that you can touch and see. Say 4 compliments to yourself or things that you're proud of. 3 people that you love that you're going to reach out to. 2 things that you're committed to learning. And you're going to repeat this mantra. Right now, I'm okay. If I have a positive attitude, I'll win. If you stay positive.
Okay, so that is Mel Robbins. There was a lot packed into that. I'm not going to park at that bus stop. You'll get the slides, but I think very, very useful practice. Some of us get down in the dumps a lot, and some people get down in the dumps a lot more than others. And just a note here, again, I'm not selecting any particular demographic for the sake of it, but the younger folk, you know, we call them Gen Z, sometimes I say millennial, people get upset when I say those things. Look, I am Gen X, so maybe myself, Bonju, who thinks is Gen Z sometimes, you know, and, you know, speaks a bit of the Gen Z language. We're Gen X, you know, and one of the things that we see that's different with the younger generation, so you guys in your early 30s, late 20s, early 20s, is the amount of frustration you bottle in. You know, we grew up at a time, and it's sometimes not your fault. You know, we grew up at a time when having fun meant only one thing. You could only have fun going out, you know, meeting people, you know, playing start, stop in the compound, having a sport of table tennis, you know, and betting your last 50 kobo on it, and, you know, coming home empty-handed. You could only have fun when we were growing up by social, physical interaction. TV started at 5, it ended at 10. There weren't many programs on it. It was Channel 5, Channel 10, Channel 7, which I hated. And that was it, you know, no cable. That's how we grew up. But what's happened over time is that you guys have more tools, more devices, more distractions, and you spend less time, you know, with people. And so the inverse effect that we're seeing is that frustration bottles up. There's no vent, there's no exhaust. And so it's a struggle, you know. So I think these kind of tools are very useful. And again, in asking about who you are, one of the key things that I want to pass across today is that you are on your way. You are making progress. And you have to examine that. You have to ask questions about yourself. You have to spend time with yourself. You know, so let's go back over that list that I just went over earlier. So when we talk about your beliefs, are you examining the kind of beliefs you have? Some people have the weirdest beliefs, you know, and some of it comes from, you know, the construct of family. We've taken in some things, oh, you know, when people say this to you, this is how you answer. When people are gathered in a place, you go the other way. You know, you don't speak first. You don't answer back, you know, and these things end up holding you back. Then how about your environment? What have you been able to do about your environment and the experiences you put yourself through? I have found that simply by changing my environment, I change my current mental state. You know, you get into particular environments and everything around you starts to shift positively. And of course, it can shift negatively as well. Behavior and attitude, that's one thing that you own. You know, you must always interrogate your response to particular influences, stimuli. You know, someone says something to you that's particularly offhanded and you fly off the handle. And, you know, you're the kind of person that when you walk into a room and you're upset, everybody's on edge because you have that kind of aura. You know, you have to interrogate it. You know, if everywhere you go, within 2 weeks, you have a bust up, a fight with somebody, maybe it's not them. Maybe, just maybe there's something about you that you need to look at. You know, super important. You know, be intentional about your training, about skills and development. You only get better through training. You only get better through training. You only get better through training. There's like, it's weird, but there aren't many other tools to get you better. Then relationships. Be selective about your relationships. We're not saying don't have many relationships or many people around you, but be very, very intentional about the people you surround yourself with. It's been said ad nauseum, if you show me 5 of your closest friends, I'll tell you a lot about your life, your net worth, how you treat your kids, how you're progressing in your own life, the kind of trajectory that you're on. Because the things you see, the things you surround yourself with, they motivate you regardless of who you are. We're social beings. That's how we're designed. So be careful about your relationships. Then habits. I think this is one of the huge, biggest, most sort of transformational cornerstones of your identity. We've talked a lot about habits. I will talk a lot more about it in this talk still. But then I want to land on this one about meaningful things. What makes meaning to you? What drives you? What motivates you? And these things may need to be uncovered. They may need to be unpacked. They may need to be discovered. You may find that you're actually drawn to young people. And when I say young people, even kids, you may find that you want to serve in a school. I'm just using these as examples. It doesn't have to be you. You may find that you are drawn to actually acts of service, that every weekend you find yourself packaging little things and going to visit people. You feel drawn to doing that. It doesn't mean you're already doing it. You might be drawn to it and never have done it until you try it once. So give yourself the license to discover things, the things that you find meaningful. It might be in the area of sports. It might be in the area of mental stimulation. It might be in the area of writing. Give yourself license to rediscover yourself. This is foundational. I'm talking about the foundations now. Before we start talking about concepts and principles, that move you forward, that take you to a new place, you need to spend time with yourself. You need to know yourself. Here's a secret, and you might just be finding this out today. It might be today's years old when you find this out. You're not going to discover yourself simply by living more or simply by growing older. You discover yourself by being intentional about who you are, by looking inward, by spending time with yourself. Some people are so afraid of themselves that the only sort of introspection they do is maybe with a friend or with a partner or with your wife. That's the only time that you can interrogate some things. In fact, some people don't even do that at all. It's time to change that. Okay, so I started with a clip on Viola Davis in Woman King. I just want to take some of these people that we see as icons and leaders and help unpack their own narratives a little bit, and get us a little bit closer to who they are so that we can learn from some of these people. Here, she's at a sort of hunger benefit. Something that she's very passionate about is eradicating hunger from the world. It's a big deal for her. You'll find out a little bit why in this clip.
Oh, now I'm crying. I didn't expect to come here and cry. I expected to come and drink lots of champagne. I didn't join the Hunger Is campaign to save the world. I didn't. I set out to save myself. They say that you're never too old to have a happy childhood. And although my childhood was filled with many happy memories, it was also spent in abject poverty. I was one of the 17 million kids in this country who didn't know where the next meal was coming from. And I did everything to get food. I've stolen for food. I've jumped in huge garbage bins with maggots for food. I have befriended people in the neighborhood who I knew had mothers who cooked 3 meals a day for food. And I sacrificed a childhood for food and grew up in immense shame. And the word that I would like to eradicate today is unspeakable. Because I think everything should be spoken. I think everybody's testimony should be spoken. I think everybody's shame should be spoken. And the stain that is on this country is that 1 out of every 5 children in this country are living in households that are food poor. And of all the elementary school teachers out there, they say that 3 out of 5 of the kids in their class come to school hungry in the richest country in the world. And here's the thing. I have a picture. It's the only picture I have of myself. My mom lost everything else. But the youngest picture I have of myself is this little girl in junior first. We called it junior first. And I have a ponytail. And I had a little bitty afro. And my mom would take whatever little bitty hair she could find and she would wrap it in one of those twisty things that you would find on bread things. And she'd make a little ponytail. And that was me in the picture, smiling with my little ponytail. And I have to tell you that that's me. That's who I remember every time I wake up. She speaks to me, this little girl. She kind of guides me, sometimes in not so good ways. You know, like with boyfriends and everything, she was really not good. And the thing that made me join the entertainment industry and the Safeway Foundation was get rid of, not by 30%, not by 20%.
So that's Viola Davis talking about abject poverty, hunger. Look, your background should not hold you back. Your background should inspire you. I had a fairly rough upbringing. I'm not going to go too deep into that today, but if I start, you wouldn't believe. You know, and I know there are people in the room that would hear me and go, how bad could it have been? You know, come and hear my story. Let's not trade stories, but let's take that upbringing. Let's take that background as inspiration. Let's take that background as fuel, you know, and be inspired to make a difference because of it. Be inspired that if it's hunger, a child wouldn't go hungry if we can help it. If it's lack of access, somebody else will have access because we exist. If it is trauma, we will protect 1 or 2 young people because of what we've been through. You know, so let's take our childhood challenges, childhood trauma as inspiration. I want to segue and talk, like I said earlier, we'll talk a little bit more about habits. One of the guys that I absolutely love, his book on the topic is James Clear. He talks about atomic habits. And here it just summarizes a little bit about how when you change a little thing, you start to transform your life. Take a listen.
We live in a very outcome-focused society. Even if you are talented, you can't succeed without having great habits. We think the thing that needs to change is the bank account or the test score or the number on the scale, but actually the thing that needs to change are the habits that precede those outcomes. They are the portion of your life that you can influence. You can be the architect of your habits rather than the victim of them. the things that are on your desk at home, your office at work, they influence your behaviors. If you can restructure your physical environment, then you're more likely to actually stick with the right habit. But the question to ask is, what are those one or two things that tend to pull the rest of my life in line? You can just build that one habit and you know that there's going to be a lot of good side effects because of it. Every action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become. Once you change that internal story, you're just like, this is who I am.
Okay. Again, a lot packed into that. I'm not going to pause to unpack it. We're still going somewhere. What you see in front of you that looks like a rough chart is a very interesting story, and I'll tell you the story. So it goes back to what James Clear was just talking about in changing little things about ourselves. So there's this whole idea of making 1% improvements. And the story is about British cycling. So in the history of the premier cycling competition, Tour de France, which is the sort of the golden standard when it comes to cycling in the world, Britain was non-existent. So from the beginning of Tour de France, over 100 years ago, Britain never won a thing. Maybe in 1908, they won a minor competition, and that was it. And interestingly enough, you would say Britain was one of those countries you could consider as a cycling country, have a kind of cycling culture. I wouldn't put it on the same scale as, say, Netherlands or Germany, where, you know, bicycles are everywhere. But these days, bicycles are everywhere. And there's a reason for that. Part of that reason is this Tour de France. So sometime in the early to mid 2000s, the country decided, listen, we want to take cycling very seriously. And British cycling then hired a coach who just believed in this concept of the aggregation of small gains, of marginal gains, to make a huge difference. And so what did he do? He didn't focus on the big things. He took all of the athletes and said, listen, we're just going to make small changes. We're just going to start making small changes. What did he do? They went for lighter tires on their bikes. They went for electric heated shorts when they cycled in winter. You know, they had biofeedback sensors that told them about their energy levels, and they studied these things and adjusted. But guess what? Other teams saw that they were doing this. They started making those same changes. So this guy went even further. He went to look for doctors, specialists, because he noticed that cyclists suffered from a particular problem. When you cycle a lot, you catch cold a lot, and cold is a virus. It's not about the weather. So the surgeon came in, taught them actually how to maintain their hygiene, you know, simple things like how to properly wash your hands, how to look after your not touching your face, you know, the kind of massage creams and techniques that they use. They tested them, the ones that gave them maximum recovery. They tested the pillows they slept on, and they tested different pillows to find out which ones gave them better sleep. You know, they took indoor wear to do their outdoor cycling because it was more aerodynamic. They did these changes over about 2 or 3 years, and shock and amazement, they started to win medals. From 2011, I believe, 2012, all the way to 2018, I think Britain only lost 1 medal between those 6 or 7 years. And that has been the story. So whether it's indoor cycling, outdoor cycling, cycling has now become such a massive culture in Britain just because these guys made those small changes, brought pride to Britain, changed the narrative around cycling for Britain, and the medals keep rolling in. Now, there's an interesting story on this page as well that you might not see. Now, if you can see my screen clearly, from 1999 to 2005, you will just see something that says see footnote, see footnote, see footnote, see footnote. And I put the footnote here. And the footnote is about France. So in those years, about 7 years, France won the title, fair and square. And in history, France has been, Tour de France came from them. It's been a big thing in France. They are the greatest when it comes to cycling. And this was one, sorry, not France. I update that. So this was actually US. So this was Lance Armstrong. Lance Armstrong of the US won the title about 6 or 7 times. But obviously, he got away with it in 1999. If you know his story, he was caught using stimulants. You know, he got away with it in 99 and got away with it in 2000. And so it was like, well, this thing is working, you know, and kept doing it. And every year he came back, he cycled again, he won. He came back, he cycled, and he won for so long until they caught him doping. They stripped all of those medals. They didn't assign it to the number 2, number 3. No, they just said, no, it's going to be in history. There's going to be this 6 years where nobody, 6, 7 years, when nobody won the medal because this guy was doping. So be careful the 1% you're making. Is it a true 1% improvement, or is it a 1% negative shortcut? The same story in the same sport, in the same game, you can see the difference. All right, let's move on, and I start to move into the second section. So we've talked a little bit about, you know, who we are, you know, how to really assess yourself. But the question is not so much how good you are now. The question is about how good you're going to be. You know, that's really what matters. What are you working on? You know, I prefer, and I've learned now in my experience, I can tell you, I prefer if there was a most improved medal than the medal that said number 1. Because you see, when you get the medal that said number 1, you're onto a different race. You're fighting to hold on to number 1, you know, and tomorrow you might be number 2 or 3. But if every day all you're working on is, how am I improving? How am I actually getting better? That's a very different race that you are in. So this gentleman is a surgeon. He talks about the difference between professionals and athletes. And I'll play that clip for you a little later in this talk. Let me just continue down the path of this 1% improvement. So this is where you come in again. I want to find out what small changes, and you know, whether you are speaking or not speaking, I want you to tackle this question today, whether during this session or more importantly, when you get home, ask yourself, what small changes can I make in my life today that constitutes 1%? Those things I want to change. Let me list a few of them and start making changes. So I want to find out, does anyone want to volunteer an area? You might not yet have defined the change, but an area where you want to make 1% improvement. You know, I need volunteers. I need at least 2 volunteers to speak. An area where you want to make 1% improvement in your life. You know, I heard yesterday when GB was saying, and you know, he was speaking about the collective vision we had in the house, you know, when we're saying that, don't be surprised if some of the leaders of this country come from this business. You know, don't be surprised if, you know, some of the leaders of our industry come from this business. It's very interesting that when you look at small spaces, or you look at, you know, a business, you know, you don't know what the potential is. But I think where we're getting to as leaders in the business, and just by, you know, sheer growing older, is you start to see patterns. You know the things that compound over time. You know the things that actually transform, you know, industries, transform countries, transform businesses. And we see the patterns. And we've already seen enough, even within this business, from the way some people in the business have changed, or even the people that have come and left, you know, we've seen a lot of signs around that. So some things are proven. But I wanted to learn from you guys. So who wants to volunteer? 1% improvement. What change are you going to make? Very quickly. Any volunteers? Someone who hasn't spoken yet? Anyone? Okay, this is the part I love, so I can pick on people. So Jade James Omitiron, good morning. Buki, I'll come to you.
Hi, Buki. I'm sorry. Hi, Tosi. So Nimi is in our Tuesday learning session, and she said,
Right.
"Mommy, you have not spoken." And then you called my name.
I heard her.
You did.
Yeah.
I was actually just thinking about it, and I particularly think it'll be in the area of my physical health. I think it was something I started and stopped, which was just making sure that I put in my 1 hour of exercise every day, which is mostly walking. So I think I would have to make that shift very quickly.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Thanks for that. Love it. Bukola, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Tosi. Good
Yes.
morning, team. Mine simply will be the spiritual side of my life, and it's just pray. Yeah, so that's what I need to do. Sigwengayo with his judging eyes, shaking his head for me. I'm just messing about. Anyway, that's the area I need to improve on.
Thanks, Buki. Wow. If you are talking about changing and improving your spiritual life, then some of us still have work to do. Thanks for that. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, no one else. Let me press. Oh, Lanre, good morning.
Hi, Tosin. Good morning.
Go for it.
Good morning, everyone. I think that mine is very similar to Jade, and it's in the area of exercise, and it's just, I mean, while on this call now, I've been trying to adjust my back for some, back pain, and then I just know that the solution is really putting some minutes of exercise every day, and you'd see the I don't know why you're laughing this hard. And you put in some minutes of exercise and you see the results. So yeah, really that's it.
Wow, it's a good sign. It's a good sign. Let's say the older people understand. When people say, "Oh, my back, my knee, people understand." We have a friend who, the moment he turned 40, he said every bone started to creak. Everything. He said everything went wrong, in his body the moment he turned 40. And you'll find out how it is. You'll turn 42, so you'll see. But Lanre, I vibe with your 1%. I think all of us, it's a good practice. Take something. It doesn't have to be many things, but just improve and stay with it. So you look at Naira, you look at, buying, 10,000 Naira for 15,000 Naira, there's a local exchange rate, in Nigeria at the moment. But interestingly enough, this is the thing with currency. Currency, regardless of what you do to it, it struggles to lose its worth. You might abuse the Naira from here till tomorrow. You still need it to sort of transact business. I can take the pound, I can take the dollar, I can take the Canadian dollar, I can take, the lira. If I crumpled any of these currencies in your market and I gave it to you, you will still take it, especially if it's the new currency. If I went to the bank and withdrew, and I was able to withdraw some of the new notes, that is sort of in short supply, you'll be grateful, regardless of what I do. You know the story. You rip it, you tape it, you drop it in oil, whatever. It's still legal tender. People will still take it. So I am using this as a metaphor to speak to you, and I mean you that I'm speaking to. There is nothing wrong with you. Your self-worth is intact. Not just current, not just your past self-worth. Even your future worth is intact. And maybe I'm not saying it well enough. So I'm going to enlist the help of a friend who's been speaking to us anyway to drive the points home, even though it's kind of in an ad, but I think she does it well.
You're worth it. 3 words we have all heard at least 1,000 times, right? You're worth it. But do you really understand what that means? It's a beautiful reminder to us all that we have worth. You have reason and rarity. There is value in each and every one of us, including you. That is precious, even on the days you might not feel it. You never depreciate in value. Those words are there to remind you. Workplace, in your home or in your own skin. Workplace, in your home or in your own skin. Say these words to yourself. I'm worth it. And I know you will always say it like you mean it. I'm worth it. Because you are and always will be. Got that?
Okay, that's the message from Viola Davis. Now I'm going to jog on quite quickly. I'll let Seth Godin talk about how the world is changing and you know, this whole idea of being the linchpin. And he came up, you know, the linchpin is a word in the dictionary and he has a knack for picking the weirdest words. It's still not a very popular word, but let's try and understand what it means. I'll let him do the talking.
But how do I have 1,400 employees and preach like everyone should be an entrepreneur? I'm like, the math doesn't add up. It literally would make my own company.
For sure, the math doesn't add up. Quest was this huge home run and you own the factory. You may not have had a building with steam coming out the top, but it was a factory. You needed people to do factory jobs. And those people probably had a good job. But the point is that going forward, most organizations are going to get smaller and smaller per dollar in sales because you don't need as many people. I mean, if you think about how many people work at Sears Roebuck versus how many people work at Amazon, you think about how many people it takes at Tesla to make a car compared to how many Henry Ford needed to make a car. We're all going in the same direction. So you have a choice, and the choice is one of three things. Either you're the replaceable cog in the pyramid who's going to get paid as little as possible, or you're the founder, the owner, the person who runs it. But for most of us, the best choice is to be the linchpin, the one we can't live without, the person who figures out what to do next.
Okay, so that's the linchpin, the one that we can't live without.
But how do I have 1,400? I
don't know why this thing doesn't let me just skip, but never mind. It's a bit weird like that. But yeah, so to be the linchpin, I have a few questions again, you know, and these are all around purpose. You know, why are you in the room? You know, in any room you find yourself, you know, they called you, they said, oh, the church treasury, and somehow you volunteered yourself. You are now a treasurer in church, but your first assignment there is to be fighting them. Or this is not how to collect money. Why are you in the room? How much do you care really about what you're doing? You know, it was a beautiful quote by Johnny Ive, and I think Bukola shared the video on one of the Mondays a few weeks ago. I always love that video for that quote. It says, you know, the way you know that they truly care at Apple is that they take as much care about what it looks like inside, knowing that they're going to seal the device forever and nobody will ever see it. They take as much care about that as they do about what you see. You know, how much care do you bring to what you do? And then what really is your job? You know, is your job what's written on the JD? Your job starts from what's written on the JD. That's where it begins. Let's be honest. There's nobody that's hired simply to just look at their job description and say, I've done it, I'm good, yay. You can't say I didn't do my work. No, you know, that's where your job begins. You have to ask yourself, what surrounds me? You know, when they say think outside the box, maybe I should leave this with you. You know, it's not about creative thinking, you know, jumping outside of the box. It's about the box has been defined. I need to do more outside the box. That's what it's about, you know. And how consistent are you? Consistency is underrated. We'll talk about that if I have the time. What are you shipping? If things are not being outputted and you're looking around and it's not happening, are you part of the problem? Or are you part of making sure it moves out? That things get finished, that things get delivered, that things get done. You know, imagine going into a KFC or into Domino's and you're asking the lady that, oh, sorry, that's my pizza. I can see it's ready. And she says, well, I'm not the one that gives it to people. You know, I mean, like, how ridiculous, right? Again, let's go back to habits. There's a lot around habits that needs to move, that needs to shift, right? So that's there. I'm going to skip this video. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to play this one. I'm going to play this one.
I've been a small-time entrepreneur since I was 14 and never did it for the money. I did it because it was interesting, because I saw a problem and I wanted to help change it. I saw a project, I wanted to see if it would work. And it was a fun ride through college. I went to business school briefly, and I had my one and only real job at a software company, which was a good one because I was making mistakes on somebody else's dime. But I left there in '84 and proceeded to just fail and fail and fail. I sold my first book the first day to Warner Books for $5,000. Chip Conley and I wrote it together when we were 24. And then I did 86, 26 years old. And then I got 800 rejection letters in a row. Oh, God. I got rejected by every well-known publisher again and again and again, because all you needed to send out a book proposal was stamps. You had to go down to the local laser printing place, because I couldn't afford a laser printer. And you print out the proposals and you just mail them. And if they liked it, they'd send you money, but they didn't like it. And then they didn't like it, and and they just kept not liking it. And I was doing projects that were sort of like, in those days, you couldn't find a recipe for fortune cookies. Wasn't in a Chinese cookbook, wasn't in Enjoy Cooking. How do you make fortune cookies? So I was going to do a cookbook with a recipe for fortune cookies. But what are the other 200 pages? The other 200 pages were little tiny perforated fortunes, some by like Henny Youngman and others that we were just going to make up. So the fortune cooking construction set. What a great idea. They don't like it. And then big books, little books, no one liked the books. And so the question is, how do you hustle harder? How do you get in front of more people? How do you, and I was bringing in spreadsheets and I was wearing a suit, and I realized that the frustration was turning into anger, and I was almost daring people to reject it. So my number could get even higher than 800, right? Once I could relax into the idea that maybe I could do something for other people, things started to go a little bit better. And one project led to another. So those 120 books, I didn't write them. I put together teams. I wrote parts of them. Really complicated almanacs, 600-page books that were basically the internet before the internet. But then the speed bump would come, right? Because you'd spend $1 million or $500,000 to make a book, and then it didn't come through or whatever. And when they did, that whole talk would come back, and I'd be afraid to answer the telephone. And it's all caving into the.
Okay, so again, I played this because you hear there 800 rejections. I don't know how many rejections you've had, but that's a record. Like I said at the start, there's too much packed into this. I'm going to skip so much, but it's in the document, it's in the presentation. Please take your time to enjoy it. I am going to start winding.
Being a small-time entrepreneur.
Winding down, and you see me skipping stuff. Don't worry about it. So again, I think that there's some things that are now required in almost any organization as the price of entry. But again, let's not even talk about organizations. Let's talk about you. What do you want to bring? A strong work ethic and a positive attitude. Price of entry. Are you coachable? Are you teachable? Huh? Complementary stack. You can't just know one thing and be the guru of the thing. And then when they say, no, I don't function here. And I talk generally about leading, about building, and about selling. I think they're master skills. I'm still learning all three. I'm poor at some of them, and I'm aiming to improve at some. And I will say the same to everyone that add this to your arsenal, if you like. Are you resourceful? Are you a creative problem solver? Do you bring your authentic self to work, or is it a mask we see every day? Okay, so I'm gonna skip this.
Unhappinesses.
I'm gonna skip this. The point about fear. So we all have fears. Some of our fears, most of our fears are irrational, but we have fear, but what do you do with your fear? Do you use it as fuel, or does it cause you to freeze? In my slightly younger days, I had a lot of fears that just caused me to literally freeze, like literally. I could freeze mid-sentence. There are people in the room that have seen it. GB will tell you of my legendary freezes, but people won't believe that, that someone like me has that. But I've used it as fuel, and I'm using myself as an example. Face your fears, use them as fuel. Much as I'd love to play this, I will skip it. Don't worry, you'll get to listen to it. But I'll play this because it's still him.
Understand this. Understand this also. You have these dreams, and as Kenny said, dreams without goals remain dreams, just dreams, and ultimately fuel disappointment. Dreams without goals, yearly goals, life goals, daily goals, monthly goals, hourly goals, minute by minute goals. Dreams without goals are just dreams, and they ultimately fuel disappointment. Goals on the road to achievement cannot be achieved without discipline and consistency. You understand? Between goals and achievement are discipline and consistency.
Yeah, you can see how he bends his knees when he talks about that. It must matter a lot.
Understand it.
So there's more to that. You can watch. This is a talk, I don't mind if I end on this one, but it's a very interesting concept. And I spoke about it earlier. This man is a surgeon and he speaks about coaching, and it separates professionals from athletes. As professionals, you go to school, you get a degree, you get some certifications, and you're like, I'm good. I know this thing now. And because I know it, I'm just going to get into my game and just do my work. But this guy says, no, that why do we think we get to that bus stop of learning where, athletes never stop training?
One is the traditional view. That is that you go to school, you study, you practice, you learn, you graduate, and then you go out into the world and you make your way on your own. That's how doctors learn. That's how lawyers do, scientists. Now, the contrasting view comes out of sports. And they say, you are never done. Everybody needs a coach. The greatest in the world needs a coach. So I tried to think about this as a surgeon. Pay someone to come into my operating room, observe me, and critique me. It seems absurd. Expertise means not needing to be coached. So then which view is right? Turns out there are numerous problems in making it on your own. You don't recognize the issues that are standing in your way, or if you do, you don't necessarily know how to fix them. And the result is that somewhere along the way, you stop improving. And I thought about that, and I realized that was exactly what had happened to me as a surgeon. So I asked a former professor of mine who had retired, his name was Bob Osteen, and he agreed to come to my operating room and observe me. The case, I remember that first case, it went beautifully. I didn't think there would be anything much he'd have to say when we were done. Instead, he had a whole page of dense with notes. Just small things, he said. Did you notice that the light had swung out of the wound during the case? Another thing I noticed, he said, your elbow goes up in the air every once in a while. That means you're not in full control. It was a whole nother level of awareness. He was describing what great coaches do. And what they do is they are your external eyes and ears, providing a more accurate picture of your reality. They're recognizing the fundamentals. They're breaking your actions down and then helping you build them back up again. After 2 months of coaching, I felt myself getting better again. And after a year, I saw my complications drop down even further. It was painful. I didn't like being observed. And at times I didn't want to have to work on things. I also felt there were periods where I would get worse before I got better. But it made me realize that the coaches were onto something profoundly important. I think it's not just how good you are now, I think it's how good you're gonna be that really matters.
Okay, so before I leave you, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Before I leave, I just want to say two things. So this is something to take away. Again, all three questions in here. write down 3 areas where you think you'd benefit from coaching and look for a coach consciously. I'm not asking you to look for a faraway mentor. And when I say far away, like someone online, look for someone you can talk to and say, I want to improve in A, B, and C. Or, I want to talk to you about my challenges and try and help me. It's not for them, it's for you. Just remember that it's for you. Then
consistency unlocks everything.
Skip all of that. We've spoken about that. And then I want to leave you with this final question. Where are you making a real difference? I'm talking beyond work. I'm talking beyond, your vocation, things that people make you do. Where really are you committing to make a real difference in this world? It doesn't have to be in a big way, it might be in the office. It might be in your neighborhood, within the streets where they have like an estate meeting or whatever. It might be in church. It might be in the mosque. It might be among friends. Are you the coordinator or something? What are you doing that makes a real difference? Contribute. We're not here for too long. 100 years seems like a lot, but again, I think we all know that that's it's a fallacy. So contribute. And the last thing I want to say, I'm not going to play this. It's worth watching. It's worth watching because this is where you see the fruit of Denzel Washington's seeds that were sown. I feel compelled to play it, but I won't play it because we're out of time. But I want you to watch it in your own time. The narrative is this was the year that Chadwick Boseman died. You can see it already on him. But he came back to say thank you in this tribute speech. He found out while he was in university as a student on financial aid that a certain gentleman called Denzel Washington paid for his school, paid for his scholarship. He didn't know, and he says, look, there will be no Black Panther if there was no Denzel Washington, literally speaking. Some of the great works we see is because somebody stood up. So I want to challenge you, even in your own inadequacy, in the things you're working on that you're still trying to be, you are still a lifeline to somebody. It might not be $1,000. It might be 100 naira. It might not even be naira. It might be your presence. It might not even be your presence. It might just be, you sending them something or helping them with something that makes a world of difference. And then the last thing I want to say, and I'm done, is a variant of something I heard before that I'm now putting some kind of poem. I don't know, I start writing poems, very weird. There is gold in you. At first sight, could be unrefined, but definitely can't be denied. It might be buried deep, so the price of dredging fairly steep. It will take some digging. It's there. It's not missing. I promise you, if you keep seeking, you will find that there is gold in you. Thank you. I'm done. Back to you, Samuel. Sorry for taking your time and going beyond. Have a nice day, everyone.